conscious startups are looking at what is called as integral growth for all, right? So there are two dimensions, right? One is growth itself typically tends to be seen as growth in terms of financial growth or growth or scale, right? Which is what most successful startups have. And even in terms of their own teams, they would look at for the team members growth in wealth, in finance, in career, in profession, right? When you talk about integral growth, it goes beyond just the financial professional ideas. Look at growth of the mind, growth of the vital, and growth of the physical, right? And when you look at these dimensions of growth, and these are not applicable just to the founders, right? It is growth for all would mean where the founders and the team members are equally concerned about the growth for the team, the core team, which helps them build the startup, the employees, if it's a gig economy, the customers, right? So everybody's growth is equally important.
Hi everyone, I'm your host Siddharth Aluwalia. Before we dive deep into this week's conversation, I would like to thank our sponsors, Prime Venture Partners. Prime is a high conviction, high support investor backing star teams with differentiated ideas. All partners at Prime work actively with the entrepreneurs post investment to accelerate building a great company. Prime focuses on building differentiating companies whose solutions are 10x better and are powered by technology and product. Prime is now investing from its fourth fund of $100 million and is often the first institutional investor in category creating tech startups such as MyGate, HackerEarth, Mfine, and Wheelseye. To know more about Prime, visit primevp.in. Today, I have with me Sameer Guglani, founder of Supermorpheus, a community based seed investor. Sameer and his wife Nandini previously built Morpheus, India's first and most loved startup accelerator back in 2008. Some of the known companies out of Morpheus are Practo, Common Floor, Hacker Rank, and even my own startup Adodoc uh, was a part of the last batch of Morpheus. I attended several retreats with Morpheus gang, one in Goa, other in Aurobindo Ashram in Auroville, and other in Ramgarh. Thank you, Samir. For such an amazing start to my entrepreneurial journey, which was also helped me to dissociate little from outcomes when I went on a spiritual I'll say explored tiny bits of spiritual path along with you. And welcome to today's podcast.
Thank you, Siddharth.
Samir, would you like to share your journey with our audience and what led to the birth of Super Morpheus? I think the last 12, 13 years would be very interesting.
Sure. You want me to start with Morpheus or just Super
Yeah,
Morpheus?
yeah, Morpheus. I'll even a little brief before Morpheus. Why was Morpheus needed at that time, and the whole journey? If we can talk it about in five,
Yeah.
7 minutes.
Yeah. Sure. So basically, I have been in the startup ecosystem or startup space since 2000. So before that, I had graduated in 1998, and I remember, for every job which I took, basically, I used to get bored in about 4 months and then start looking for a new opportunity. And after three such times, once I was talking to a friend, and he said, if you want to really learn, because that is really what my objective was from a job, he said you should join a startup. So at that time, I had no idea what a startup is. So he says, I said, what is a startup? He says, startup is where they're inventing the future. So at that time, I had no experience to actually know what he was saying. But I mean, now I know that is absolutely true. Actually, startups are inventing the future. But the line was very fascinating to me. And as I was looking for jobs, I remember having two offers, one from a mid-sized company in Bangalore, which was paying a good salary, and one from a startup in the telecom space. And so my heart was saying, join the startup, and my mind was saying, be with a stable company, get paid better. And it was very confusing. I couldn't decide. And then I had this idea that maybe I can tell the big company I need 2 months of notice period. And actually, I have 1 month notice period, so I can quit and join the startup and see how I feel and then take a call. And that's what I did. I called the big company. They said, no problem. And I went to the startup, and it was called MindNetOn at that time, related in Sonim Technologies. And within 4 days, I just felt this is where I want to stay. And interesting thing is, This is where I stayed for 4 years next. And this is where I personally experienced excellence in my own work and growth for the first time. It had an amazing atmosphere, culture, which was very empowering, a lot of very bright colleagues. And in those days, 2000, this company, the GPRS was about to be launched. And these founders had this vision to build first mobile voice over IP application and server side. And I used to work in that team, and that work was, it was so early. Like, I mean, only in the recent COVID time this has become mainstream, voice over IP over mobile. But so that's the work we did. So I used to lead the mobile handset team, application team over there, and had a great time. Learned a lot. After that, basically, uh, honestly, I always thought that I should be in a creative career, and and that was thing. I even tried to quit engineering in the first year to do fashion design, but my parents were kind of they suggested I should go back and finish engineering. But that idea was always there in my head. So while I was at Sonam, I was really doing well as a programmer and a tech lead. So I had the confidence to say that maybe I should think of a creative career at this point, and I decided that I want to pursue filmmaking. And for that I started to hang out in the film and theater circles in Bangalore. And after a while I wanted to apply to go for filmmaking in the US, and that is how I met Nandini. Actually, I was trying to make a short film to apply for masters in the US. At that time, we met, and we made the film together, and we decided to also kind of be life partners and work partners. And then my company shifted me to the US. So I was still a programmer, tech lead, but working out of San Francisco. But we had this plan that we'll work for 2 years and then quit and go back to India and make films. And one of the things we used to do was we used to watch a lot of Netflix. It was a physical DVD delivery, and we were so much into that we could live without food, but not without Netflix. That was our thing. And but instead of saying, before our kind of planned stay was over, we came back to India in 2004 and for my brother's wedding, and we didn't get a visa to go back. So that visa rejection is actually what brought us into entrepreneurship, because after a visa got rejected, right? Before we could look for jobs, lots of people are calling us to offer jobs, lots of our ex-colleagues and bosses, and we said, hey, we are in so much demand for jobs, so maybe we can try something. And then, like, if it doesn't work out, so that is when we started our first startup, which was called Madhouse. And Madhouse was actually, we were trying to build Netflix in India, basically. So because of our passion, and we actually started it more from the love of movies, less for the love of startups. But within 3 months of starting and working on that project, and I think we were working 16, 18, 20 hours a day, I remember this feeling that, all this time in my professional life, I have been trying to quit engineering side and find something creative. I was not satisfied, but this was the first time I was feeling very much at peace with my work, basically. And that is what, so the love for movies then transformed to love for startups. So Madhouse was started in Chandigarh. We launched in Delhi, and it was about 2.5 years of journey. We raised an angel round from Indian Angel Network and Mumbai Angels at that time. We almost raised Series A. There were only 4 or 5 VCs at that time, but two of them passed on us. And then basically, Madhouse was acquired by a company from that time called 70 for a very fairly modest, nothing, no big exit. It was a very modest exit. And when we joined 70 basically, initially it was good because you were able to relax and spend most of the time as free time. But I think as an entrepreneur, after very fast, we got bored of that kind of relaxed schedule, and we decided to quit. I think 10 months later, we put on our paper, and we had 12 months of notice, like 12 months, which we had to stay. And then we started to go out in Bangalore. So this was January 2008, and the community-based startup events, right, the smaller events where few people get together and chat about startup, had just started in Bangalore, and we used to go to them. And what happened was that we ran into founders who were basically, so while we want to figure out what should be our next startup, what happened was we actually ended up meeting a lot of young startups which were 6 to 12 months old, and many of them were interested in our experience and having conversation with us. So some of those interactions then shifted to going out for coffees. And I remember first time when somebody asked us, and honestly, what was happening was whenever we met founders and discussed their startups, it was, somehow we felt in a very elevated state of consciousness. And something was very magical about that. We felt very expansive versus, our jobs, which we had big cabins and, 50 lakh rupees salary and a big, big title and all. That felt like a jail actually. And that's when somebody asked us, the founders, would you become our advisors and give us support for 6 months, and then you can basically, we can be on our own. So I said, great. I mean, we are having so much fun. We'll do it. And they said, how much will you charge? And we said nothing. Said why? I said, I mean, this is how the startup world is, right? I mean, this is people help each other, and people have helped us. We'll help you. So, and it took 2 3 days. I was trying to convince this guy to take free help, and he wouldn't agree with me. And his name is Ankit Maheshwari. He was start up a company with
Yeah.
Instablogs. And finally, I went back home and I had to do this calculation. This is what your salary is. This is my per hour cost, and I came up with this number 1%. And I said, hey, we'll do 1% equity, and me and Nandini will help you 8 to 10 hours a week, and basically we do a 6 months vesting, so that if there's a breakup in between, one can kind of settle down things. So this arrangement became the seed of what became Morpheus later on. Because I remember a week or 2 weeks later, we were at another event in Bangalore, and we met Sumit and Lalit from Common Floor, and basically we met them, we hung out, they asked us this question, and we just so essentially we had four companies, with which we had this arrangement while we were still in our jobs, and our idea was still to start a startup. This was a part-time thing, right? But we were enjoying this interaction so much, and very soon we realized that maybe we can just do this as a business, right? Startup for startups, where you work with one startup a day and five a week, and after 6 months they graduate, right? And it made sense to us basically, and that is when we thought of a name, and which was also another story that we were walking down Cunningham Road in Bangalore, and I had this idea that Nike is a good brand. It's a Greek goddess of victory, and I had this new iPhone. iPhone 1 had just come. My friend had brought it, so I opened a Wikipedia list of Greek gods, and Nandini said that our first starter was from M, so the M is lucky for us. So why don't we look at M? So I scrolled on M, and I find Morpheus, which is the Greek god of dream, basically, and the domain was available. So that is how I think in less than 10 minutes we had the name done, and then so that became our kind of formal venture. And also I think around that time, or maybe a little before that, we also became aware of Y Combinator and Techstars, which were doing a similar job in the US. They were still new, not very validated, but for us it was a big validation, because they had been around for 2 years, done a lot of work, and Paul Graham used to write a lot of good articles which you could read and understand. So that is how Morpheus started. So first, but we changed 1% to 5%, because now that it was not a part-time thing, we were going to put all our time and all our savings into our own life, and this is our future income, right? So that's what made sense at that time. And so the first three batches of Morpheus was basically both of us giving 8 to 10 hours a week of time for about 4 to 6 months, and that is when basically after that we went out to raise some money, because we felt we had done some good job. So by the time batch three, we already had the Common Floor, we had Practo, we had HackerRank, few of the good companies, which were more popular. There were other good companies also, a little less known, and we raised money. And interesting part is that almost and we knew people in the ecosystem from our Madhouse days. We had raised money at that time. I think I had a list of 70 people in my Excel sheet, and nobody wanted to invest, because what we were saying was that, hey, we already get 5%, for our time, so we'll add 5 lakh rupees to that, and then five can become eight or nine, and you can take half of it, and we take half of it, right? And most people thought that we were trying to take 50% carry, actually, and they tried to, and basically, so it was very interesting. But the thing was, we were very clear not to change our model unless somebody gives us a valid reason, right? So we felt, so we were okay to continue just with time, right? We were not running out any money on time. So at that time, and we were looking for four people. Okay, 25 lakh rupees is 1 crore rupees. At that time, one guy named Kapil Bhatia, he basically was living in the Dubai, and he was a consultant in healthcare system, and he wanted to invest in India startup. So he found one of our portfolio companies called Life Mojo and called them, and just chatted with them, and he became interested to invest in their round, and they introduced me as their advisor to talk to him. And when we talked after some time, he also became interested to invest in Morpheus, as well as also give some of his own time to run things. And a very smart guy, very good friend of mine now. And then after a while, he came back. In a few days, he came back to Bangalore. He came down to Bangalore. He met Life Mojo guys. He met us, and before he left, he made a commitment to both of us. Right now, Kapil has committed 25 lakh rupees, And after a few days, he calls me and says, one of my friend who was my roommate in New York wants to also invest 25 lakh rupees. And I said, okay. And then both of them called me later and said, we have a third friend who wants to also put 25 lakh rupees. So basically within no time, I think 2 weeks, we had 75 lakhs committed. And then two of our other friends put 10 lakhs each. So first was 95 lakhs. And this is very interesting that these are all outsiders, right? They had no idea about how the ecosystem works. But when they talked to us and they saw the work, it seemed to them it made sense. And even though I mean, not allowed to disclose numbers, but all of them who invested in our first fund actually have already made a decent amount of money, and there is still equity left in that. And then when we raised our third fund, basically, that was much easier, and ecosystem had developed. So we had almost everybody, who was kind of established at that time. Vijay Shekhar Sharma, the first guy to give us a check. Rajan was there, Rajan Anandan Bloom, India Quotient, Ganesh, all of our LPs, previous one, they repeated, they brought their friends. So it was a great time, basically, And so Morpheus was overall 2008, 2014. But I think the speciality of Morpheus was really not the money; it was really the community, right? So the community. I mean, we basically accidentally stumbled upon this idea that if we put the founders in a mailing list and they can talk to each other, that will unlock a lot of knowledge, and that really worked. So in those days, me and Nandini, we used to live in Chandigarh. We would travel to Bombay, Bangalore, and Delhi every month. One of the things we did was we met with startups one on one, and then we had this thing called Gang Meetup, which was one of the evenings. It was basically a big party for all the founders, local, from Morpheus and friends. And that is really, and honestly, now I look back and see that was really the secret of the bonding in the Morpheus gang, because people would come in the evening, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and we would all stay up till late night, and it was a party. You can see what all was supposed to be happening. And founders who were generally carrying a lot of stress and load outside could really relax, be themselves, talk to each other. So for all of us, it was like a monthly therapy actually. And then twice a year, we organized what was called Morpheus Gurukul, which was basically 3 days in a resort in Goa or one of these places, and absolutely zero agenda. And people could just relax and talk to whoever they want, do whatever they want. So all of these things. So I really feel Morpheus was more primarily a community of people who were having fun, and some startups got built along the way, basically. So to me, the biggest takeaway of Morpheus is community. And I personally got a lot of 150, 160 friends, and maybe 200 friends for lifetime, basically. So 2014, basically, we decided to wind up Morpheus. Actually, decision was done in 2013. Took us a year. Primarily, two reasons. One was that we saw a lot of startups coming from a very young age. So if you go to a young startup office, you can't tell who's the founder and who's the employee. It's all a very unified energy. Everybody's contributing. Everybody's playful. It's a very joint effort, and I think that's what creates the magic to create a breakthrough. But as the startups went through the next stage of seed funding, and even more next stage of being well funded, we started to see a kind of a division, basically. So now, if you walk into startup office, it will be a big office. You will see the founders sit separately, employees separate. There is a division in place. There is that certain kind of aggression, certain stress starts to build up, basically. So, and that we saw in startup after startup. So basically, from a very happy and light workplace, which is creating magic, it started transitioning into a unhappy, miserable, little bit dark workplaces, where there was a lot of focus on growth and valuation without really caring about what was happening to the humans who were involved. And that is something which we honestly did not like. And we tried to talk to founders, nobody was interested. So we took a call to shut down the project. We did not want to be part of that kind of ecosystem. And I think, and basically, and that is when we went into our own journey, a personal journey of inner discovery. So all three of us, me and Nandini and Sarabjit, are interested to go into what I would call integral spirituality. So there is a form of spirituality where you say that the world has a lot of problems and conflicts, so I need to get out of the world. But there's another form which is called integral spirituality, or we call it, where you realize that all the conflicts are actually within myself, and what I need to do is observe and resolve them one by one, keep dropping them, and I can experience their harmony while living in the world. So that's the journey which we were on. And during that journey, basically, I also started another community with some friends called Oneness Community, which was a community of people who were on the similar journey, basically, right? And many founders actually were part of it, including Siddharth. uh, they were exploring themselves, and many of them came to a point where they could feel a lot more harmony, peace, and balance in their own life. And then in 2020, I was asked by some of them to help them integrate these ideas into their own startups, right? And that was something honestly very exciting for me, because I was always kind of this consciousness of startups was something which I thought should merge, and I had to pick one, in 2014. But I would love to have the both together. And also earlier, 2020. Yeah. So basically, I started working with some startups and helping them integrate these ideas. And this is not an easy thing. It takes time. Basically, it's a very work of patience and love. And that idea started developing. And at in 2021 January, in fact, I had this idea because my mentor had asked me to write a book on conscious business. But I had this idea of saying that I don't know much about businesses, because business is a very large canvas, corporations, SMEs, but I know a lot about startups. So maybe I should write a book on how do you merge startups and consciousness. So in January, I started that up, and in March, I had the first draft ready. And as I was also working with startups, so basically, so these things were going in parallel. So there was this book in which I was developing this thought of startups and consciousness, and then I had started working with startups, and somewhere these two things started to merge basically. So I decided to invest in one of the startups which I was working with in Chandigarh. And the moment that happened, I had committed 5 lakh rupees. Basically, the 5 became 15, because within the 7 years from 14 to 21, I think a lot of people had made wealth from startups, and they were willing to invest it back to startups. So four of my friends, three people joined, basically said, we will also invest. So we did a co-investment of 15 lakh rupees. And that company did well. And, they continued to grow without losing consciousness. And then through an introduction I made, they raised 50 lakh rupees from another investor. So what I learned, basically, one of the realization I had was, let's say the market, right? The market which funds startups, it has certain expectation. Let's say it wants, for a particular startup, it wants 10,000 users being there, right? Now, actually, the market is not asking you, is it conscious or unconscious? Market is saying 10,000 users, right? Of a certain quality. Now, have you gotten the user through a conscious process or an unconscious process? That is really left up to you, basically, right? So I could see that a conscious startup can also raise money and build well, right? And then, see, all these years we had exits, for ourselves, but we never invested into startup because we had this disconnect going on, which was now getting resolved, right? So we became a bit open. Me and Nandini decided we'll start investing some capital back into startups. And then another opportunity came up in this company called Ligar Mobility, which was run by Ashutosh, who was also a Morpheus gang founder. For the first startup, didn't work out. So this was the next one. This is a deep tech company where they were building technology to auto balance scooters. So they were raising around 3.5 CR, and I said, I'll invest with you guys. And that again became a co-investment. Instead of putting 10 lakhs personally, we put 40 lakh between 8 people. And then through that, actually, I met Anish Reddy of Capillary, who was also an investor. And both of us had kind of similar views on spirituality and consciousness and business together. We became friends. And then through him, another startup came up, was called Fishy Network, where it ended up being a 1 crore round, which we participated in with 15 people. So what was happening was, every new deal, basically more people were kind of returning, these people whom we have known always, right? And there was this word going around which I had heard, that Morpheus guys are back, basically, right? And but for me, it was still a part-time thing, just doing like 5 or 10 hours a week. And then COVID came, second wave, and after that, July happened. And honestly, that part is still a blur to me, because through July and August, things were happening, deals were coming, new people were joining syndicate, we were executing the deals. It's only middle of August that I realized that I was working 15 hours a day, and we were doing one deal a week as Supermorpheus syndicate, and the syndicate had grown to 50 people. And I was absolutely comfortable. I had no discomfort, which I had felt in 2013, right? Because somewhere my idea or my need for startups and consciousness being together was being met. And when we started this journey, I had thought that we'll find a very few startups, maybe one a quarter, who would agree to ideas like this. But to my surprise, almost everybody has been okay. And now our philosophy is basically, the way we say is, let's build great startups, let's do wealth creation, and let's take care of human progress and consciousness. So this is a new thing for me, because in 2014 I used to feel that startup Big startups and consciousness are mutually exclusive. Right? So I used to feel there is a gap, so I picked one. But through my own journey of growth and through especially the book I was writing, I saw this possibility of integrating startups, which is the energy of an entrepreneur and wealth and consciousness. If we do these three, we can create conscious startup and conscious wealth. And that's really and that's the principle around which Supermorpheus is built, right? So when this happened, I realized that we need to do this full time. So that is when we started to organize ourselves from just being an ad hoc operation. And the name also came at that time, because what I had realized was that all the 160 founders which Morpheus had in his portfolio had also grown up. And look at you yourself, so that you've gone through so much, right? So this was really a superior team, right? So it might be said that that in Morpheus, maybe were three, four of us who were mature enough to help 150 founders who were younger. But right now, I think we are 150 plus mature people trying to help the ecosystem, right? And also obviously we make investment, right? So the first thing I did was to revive the Morpheus gang community, and the name which came to me one of the nights as I was sleeping was Supermorpheus. And initially, I told myself that okay, it's 11 p.m. I'll see in the morning. But the voice was so strong that I actually had to wake up at 11:30 and put the name down. And that I think to me it seems quite appropriate actually. And then so we had 150 founders from Morpheus rejoin the community. 50 angels which had joined new, and about 30 founders. So we had done about 15 deals. So the beginning of the Supermorpheus community was 200 people, which is let's say September beginning, and by now we are already 300 plus. And the one difference from the Morpheus time, the Morpheus gang community was basically the portfolio founders. But right now, the community of Super Morpheus is open to all founders from across the world who resonate with the two themes, right? One is the theme of being a community, right? And this is a real living community of people who care about each other, who help each other, right? It's not a network where you come to just see what can I take. Also, as a community, our core theme is to see, can we realize the possibility of great startups, wealth creation, and consciousness at the same time. So while 300 people are working together, about 100 of us are also part of the syndicate, basically, where we make angel investments. And over in less than a year, I think we have made 35 plus investments. The pace is about 2 deals a week right now. And we've been also very fortunate that due to our reputation and the network, basically, we get access to very high quality deals almost on a daily basis. In fact, our problem has been not the deal flow, it's basically the capital flow, right? And what we have learned is that at the pace which we are working, syndication becomes a little difficult process because the overhead of syndicate every deal is very high. So it seemed very natural that we should set up a fund. So as of now, we are quite close to setting up a fund in Singapore, which will be a small fund, 10 to $20 million. Mostly money will be raised from the community and the individuals who are already connected to us. And the model is the same. So fundamentally, in Supermorpheus, it's a community-based investment model, which means all the deals are coming automatically through the community because so many people are there. They know founders in their own network. And even for evaluation of every deal, we are able to make a three-people team for every deal who are the three experts from that domain. And we can trust their judgment. And once they recommend investment to go through, and typically we do 100K on an average, 50 to 100K on an average a deal, then the money will come from the fund and the syndicate. So that's the story. Sorry, it was a little longer than.
No, I enjoyed, Samir, reliving it. You have told us at multiple retreats. So, Samir, would like to know, right, what has changed fundamentally in the startup ecosystem let's say, on a first principle basis, in the nature of the founder or in the nature of the VC, that you see much more aligned. You are now much more conscious being, and also you are now more aligned to the startup ecosystem, which is in 2021.
Yeah, I think changes have happened on the both sides. I have also changed. I think I had a very hard stance that startups are anti-consciousness. So I think I have also grown and become more accepting and more flexible. But I think there is a change in the. I think startups. See, if you look at startups, are the most evolved form of corporates, right? And startup itself, the learning cycle is very fast. So I am seeing this honestly, Supermorpheus. Our scope of work is global, so we work with teams in UK, US, Singapore. I'm generally seeing a lot more aspiration in entrepreneurs to build. They still want to build big businesses. They still want to create wealth, but with consciousness. I think that is a very strong thing, but it is more visible in mature entrepreneurs, which basically means people who have been in the startup ecosystem from 5 to 10 years. Which means they have either tried to do some startups on their own, or they have been in ownership positions in different startups, right? So people who have been through the journey for 5 to 10 years, they have come to that maturity, or they have evolved to understand that consciousness is as important as well, and as startups, as technology, as disruption. It is emerging to be a very strong element in the startup ecosystem. So that's what I see, and I'm absolutely happy. Basically, for me, I mean, I couldn't ask for anything more. Basically, merging of consciousness and startups is something, it's for me, it's a double high. Basically,
And for our listeners, could you please elaborate more? You were used the word consciousness many times. I know it because I have been associated with you for almost 7 to 8 years. But uh, if you can
yeah.
elaborate more on it.
See, it's a hard one to define. Essentially, a subjective matter. But I think in case of startups, one could say that conscious startups are looking at what is called as integral growth for all. Right? So there are two dimensions. Right? One is growth itself. Typically, tends to be seen as growth in terms of financial growth or growth or scale. Right? Which is what most successful startups have. And even in terms of their own teams, they would look at for the team members growth in wealth, in finance, in career, in profession. Right? When you talk about integral growth, it goes beyond just the financial professional ideas. Look at growth of the mind, growth of the vital, and growth of the physical. Right? And when you look at these dimensions of growth, and these are not applicable just to the founders, right? It is growth for all would mean where the founders and the team members are equally concerned about the growth for the team, the core team, which helps them build a startup, the employees, if there's a gig economy, the customers, right? So everybody's growth is equally important. It is not to say that the founders should not make disproportionate amount of return. That is fine. But what we end up seeing is that in most startups, as the power builds, right, as the valuation builds, there tends to be a certain tendency to look after the interests of the people who are in the center, basically, right? And everybody else's interests start to take a backseat, right? So the idea of a conscious startup is to be very conscious of the impact it is having on the founders, on the core team, on the employees, on the customer, on the economy as such. Uh, because in stress startup, even the founders are very miserable. I mean, you know that story basically. It has been told many times.
Sameer, I want to know that what role did having a certain financial freedom played in your journey uh, to take choices, to dissociate from startup ecosystem, and just to focus on your own personal and spiritual growth back in 2014 or even earlier when you said no to many things?
Actually, that's a very important question because I think fundamental financial availability of funds is important to gain certain freedom in life and to also enables you to actually do stuff, right? So basically, when we started Madhouse, I think through that journey we were fairly financially constrained, so we were tied to certain things, and we were also being young learning. But once we left our job, the job after Madhouse was 70, and we had 50 lakh rupees of savings. First, it enabled us to take a call that we should not raise any money until we do the kind of work which we are doing. That's which is what we start to work with startups right away. And we were actually able to continue to work till batch three, where we had companies like Practo. And even after that, we still had freedom to actually go out and try to raise money, but not agree to the terms which people might be trying to dictate to us. People who didn't understand what is to be done, right? So I think the capacity to continue to execute at a certain level, whatever is your clarity and vision is very important. It's very liberating, right? So that is what allowed us to continue, and we could wait till the time we found the right investors or they found us, right? And after that, we reached a point. See, I think especially if you are trying to pioneer or try to introduce new ideas and new models, right? You will always face doubts and resistance. That I think, and see, ability also, which has been there between me and Nandini, is ability to bootstrap your life. See, we used to live in the US. My salary was like $111,000 in 2004. Very, very comfortable life. We came back to Chandigarh. We were doing Madhouse. We were living in a very small room in my parents' house. You know, we had one bike and we used to eat like, we used to still remember share one plate of chola bhatura in the morning, right? So our expense, personal expense, was only 25,000 rupees. Oh, sorry, 5,000 rupees, because we were obviously rent and food was taken care of. So we've also had this ability to scale down the quality, like to bare minimum, right? I think that is also important. We so in the Morpheus time, we traveled only by train in the beginning, right? And of course we had so many friends with founder. We never had to stay in hotel. We would stay with friends. So there were a lot of stuff you could do to actually optimize as per your finances, right? So there is also that part involved. So you can your runway is longest in that sense, right? You have the freedom. And and I think what I have seen, so recently I was looking at a founder's presentation about certain markets, and he was talking about market opportunity and how they're going to target and attack and capture the market. And it didn't make any sense to me. I said to him, so you should pause. I think you don't have a market opportunity. What you have is a value creation opportunity, right? So I think fundamentally, as an entrepreneur, what you should see, like this Arjun ki Aankh, that you see a value creation opportunity and you go after that. If you can create value in the market, right, market will reward you with valuation, with revenue, with whatever it is, right? Because that is the law of capitalism, right? So now that I look back at Morpheus, I think we were just in love with founders, and creating value for founders as friends with the founders was something which that's all we did, right? And it actually led to a lot of financial reward as well, right? So by the time, we were still bootstrapped. By the time we quit Morpheus, there was no big exit so far. And the fund size is very small, so they couldn't really pay us salaries, right? But at that time, we could easily see there were so many companies which were on a very nice trajectory that we could assume that within a year or two, the exit will start and it will take care of our life. And that's why we quit, right? And we could really be off all kind of work 2014 onwards. Since then, we have not earned anything else. All the money which we have, even the money which we are using to invest in Supermorpheus, is money which has come out of the work which we did in Morpheus. And there is still sufficient amount, which is, basically most of it is in stock, that we can actually live our life, without anything. So you see, this also enables us to, at least for me, I have absolute clarity that I'm only in Supermorpheus because not to earn any more money, right? Not to work with more startups. I've done enough with startups, not to gain validation. That's also happened. The only possibility which is exciting and interesting for me is the possibility of consciousness in startups, right? And till the time I see the possibility, I will work. Till the day it doesn't work, I can step out, right? So that I think gives a lot of very strong leverage and clarity to stay the course. So I think in that sense, I would definitely advise people to kind of look at financial independence as a core thing which can give you the freedom to do really what you live without any corruption and adulteration. Yeah.
And it allowed you to explore. I believe from 2014 till 2020 you stayed in Chandigarh, you explored staying in Pondicherry, and you could spend time on self development. uh,
Yes, 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 absolutely, absolutely. So, see, in fact, I came to a point where in the beginning, I had this, I started in 2014 when I started my spiritual quest. Initially, I felt money was something not so good, actually, right? So I even felt resistance to money, but I think that got resolved at some point. But definitely, availability of capital was a very big enabler for me to go on a journey of my own self, where I could search for myself. I could learn things which I wanted to learn. I read a lot of books. I traveled. I learned Sanskrit as a language, which is obviously non-monetary. Nandini, on the other hand, discovered ceramics and pottery as an interest 6 years ago. Until today, she has been able to pursue learning. We have set up a studio at home. She makes fantastic stuff, but there is no pressure to make money, right? So this is a very interesting thing, that you can continue to do something which you love to do and become better and better at it, and even finance it, because for something like pottery, right? I mean, you need a studio, you need a kiln and everything. So it is a very big enabler. I would definitely agree, but obviously it comes after you have earned your money, right? So basically, that is true.
Also, Samir, it was because you were very patient. There was no hurry. You know, your first initiative, Morpheus, came out of love to work with the founders, and then you were patient. There was nothing that you wanted. Immediately any immediate exit. So how can founders optimize? Now you have worked for founders for more than, I think, 13, 14 years. How can founders optimize to build for long term with patience and make sure that the result just takes care of itself rather than worrying about how, because there is unfortunately uh, the pressure to create a large outcome from everyone,
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah.
team, from investors.
See, this is something I think we understand with maturity, and when we study life and how I wouldn't say large, but I would say large slash high quality, long lasting outcomes. Where do they come from? You see, right? They come from if we are able to work without distraction on the task at hand, and we are able to enjoy. Right? So basically, good work is also the work which we enjoy doing. Right? And you can only enjoy doing something in the present if you are free of outcome bias. So this is something people learn over a period of time. At least I've been fortunate enough to learn that. I think so. You can only not worry about the outcome if you are having so much fun doing what you are doing. Right? So I think that is something which if people can discover something which they love to do, which basically means, it goes back to what is the reason a founder is doing a startup, right? If the reason is an external achievement that I wish to achieve, popularity, validation, or certain financial outcome for myself, or I need to prove something to the world, that will never go too far. But if the reasons are intrinsic, right, the reason is something, the joy which you get when you perform that act of whatever that job is as a founder, right? I think for us, the if you see the Morpheus journey started when we were meeting founders, just on cafes and feeling that joy within us, right? So when we continue the journey, the finance really did not matter, and that allowed us to be very truthful and committed and participating in the journey of a founder, right? It was never an external. And honestly, between me and Nandini and Sarabjit, we have probably been part of 1,000+ startup journeys, right? Even though we own stock only in a few hundred plus, right? Because for us, it's not the outcome of that startup income, which is why we do it. We do it because we love startups and we connect with them so much, right? So I think finding that connect and then doing stuff is really one of the keys for founders, basically, to really feel that do they have an inner connect with the problem they are solving, with the work which they are doing. And all the founders I know who have that inner connect, I mean, they do well, they create stuff which is very long term and makes them very happy. And the financial outcome happens actually. The quality will just happen basically. You have to just do everything at times.
And Samir, if you have to reflect back, and now because these relationships with the founders are more than a decade old,
Hmm.
if finding patterns in those relationships which you enjoyed over a long period of moves, what were those patterns or what were those founders building? How were those founders thinking?
No, no, I see. Basically, it's the same thing. The founders which were really somehow they felt attraction to solving a particular problem or a particular set of problems. Like they had so much joy and obsession with the problem which they were trying to solve. I think those are the founders where we have seen, and they will be also they will be long term. They will actually take time to do the work. They will not be like high speed. In fact, honestly, what I've seen is all the high speed ones which we have worked with, they don't go places. Another thing is that these founders, they have very less ego basically. So they are interested to solve the problem for which they are ready to constantly learn, right? Because nobody knows all the answers. Because they are so interested, they are always open to learning from their own peers, learning from books, learning from all kind of sources, learning from their customers, right? So humility tends to be a very very and openness and humility, lack of ego. I think that's a very big enabler for founders where we've enjoyed interacting with them. And people who like to meet other people at equal places, they like to respect their team. That's where we found a lot of resonance basically. And people who like the community culture. I think that's the biggest thing about Morpheus and Supermorpheus is that you are not alone building a company. You almost feel like part of a family where everybody is building a company, right? Which means you can participate in lot many more journeys, and you can invite people to participate in your journeys. I mean, it is an absolutely magical experience. I have no words to explain it. But in Morpheus and Oneness and Supermorpheus, that's what I felt. That's what people enjoy. That you are actually literally part of many journeys. And see, another thing which at least what we did is we were always interested in growth of founders as a fundamental outcome. It was never the growth of company, never the growth of valuation. As long as founders are happy and they were growing, and many founders, they found that startup was not something which they wanted to do. That's what they discovered, and they found another path for themselves. I think that is great, right? So I think it's a growth of humanity and the growth of humans, and so that would mean that people who are looking to grow, basically, they are always open to opportunities of growth. They're open to giving. They're open to taking. So I think that's some of the qualities I would say.
And how could you find entrepreneurs who are also, above competition? Means, because startups are extremely competitive, in sense that, especially in B2C, where the notion is the winner takes all, right? And to ascribe to the qualities that you mentioned, one has to be certain, uh, disregard would not be the right word, but disattachment from competition. What are they doing? And
See, there is a line which my mentor used in some other context, where he said, "Competition is for mediocres. Excellence has no competition." So, if you truly understand the nature of business, basically, you know that excellence is very rare. It's very hard to achieve, and if you can achieve excellence, you will be anyway above and ahead of the competition, right? And if there is somebody else who achieves excellence, you are going to celebrate their excellence equally, because you know how hard it is to come to that point. So I think commitment to excellence requires you to take your eyes off the competition. See, you need to be aware of what is happening in the market. You need to know what's happening. Many of the things can be knowledgeable. It can be inspirational. But again, competition is external. That need for excellence is internal. Right? Like, for example, I would say probably Steve Jobs was the only guy building iPhone, and there was no competition. He might have still built an excellent product. So for somebody who truly loves what they are doing, they don't need competition to create insecurity in them. Right? They are committed enough that even if they were alone building that thing on an island, they will still build the most excellent thing. I think, how could I find? I honestly don't know, but I think what I've seen in life is there is this law of resonance, right? If you are clear and resonating in a certain frequency, in a certain personality, somehow or the other, the universe makes you meet people. Like, I don't know how we met, right? Basically, I mean, it's some kind of a resonance. And see, also the thing is, if you meet somebody and if you are authentic and original, then who you are is very clear. Then people can take a call to build relationship or not. Most of the relationships which at least I've had are very long term in nature. These are lifetime relationships. They are relationships which have no agenda fundamentally other than to be friends. So we should be friends if we enjoy and we grow together, right? What we will build together, there will be many startups in Morpheus which financially led to no outcome, right? Zero. But I mean, we are still friends, all of them. Right? So the friendship was above. See, also being non-transactional and non-commercial in life, I think has for me has been very useful. I mean, it is not that I understood that is how I was basically somehow from my childhood. So it has been also very enabling, basically, not to focus on near-term gains. Not to focus on eating the other person, right? Basically, but how can you collaborate and all of us can do better? Basically. Like, I personally don't understand competition at all. I only understand collaboration.
thank you so much, Samir. I wanted to go on and
Mm,
on, but
mm.
want listeners to come back and imbibe the conversation that we had. Uh, Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
Samir. It's been great to deep dive again. This time into your journey, your thought process.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you. Have fun.